Hello, beautiful mamas, and welcome to the Unstoppable Mom Summit. Break free, step up, thrive. So, today I'm so excited because we have a lot going on with us, if we're really honest, about mom guilt. And I have an expert today who is going to help us get through that. So, yes, I'm excited. So, I have Miss Alysia Lyons with us today. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So before we actually get into the questions I have for you, what I do want you to kind of help us with is a little bit about yourself. Like tell the people who don't know you yet, just a little bit about you.
Sure. I am a mom of a 13-year-old boy. I am an author and I'm a coach. I'm also a fiance. So I've been in a relationship with my partner for almost 10 years. And I love helping moms release mom guilt. And because I noticed that the better person that I became, the better parent I became. And I want that for moms and for children. So that's why I do what I do.
I absolutely love that. I really do. So today, I don't have very many questions for you. There's a total of about 8. And we're going to get through them. And at the end of this, mamas, we're going to have something, you'll find it below this video, of course, where you can stay in contact with her, as well as you can do some action steps to make sure that you are actually implementing the things that she is teaching in your life starting today. Okay. So the first question I want to ask is, what is mom guilt? Help the people understand what mom guilt is and why so many moms experience it like very intensely.
So I love the question. Mom guilt is a notification. It's not a life sentence, which a lot of moms think. And I used to think like they hand you a baby and then they hand you a sack of guilt and you just get to carry that around with you until you die. And that's just not the case. It is a notification. I had this analogy come up when I was driving my fiance's car, and it was the first car that we'd ever had that had these sensors. So when somebody made a left turn in front of me and cut it a little close, the car was like beep, 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 beep. And I was like, it's not my fault. They pulled in front of me. And my fiance was like, it's not an accusation. It's just a notification. And I was like, that's what mom guilt is. It's a notification that your actions or inactions are out of alignment with your values, and which is connected to your belief system. So if you believe that, and I'll use a really popular one, that a good mom stays home with her kids, then if you need to or want to work outside of the home, then you're going to feel guilt because I'm not at home with my kids, because a good mom is home with their kids, right? And then, entrepreneurial moms who sometimes are home with their kids, then we feel guilty when we're working and we feel guilty when we're not working. And there's some beliefs in there, like I should be with my kids more. I should be doing all this stuff with my business. So it's recognizing that I'm feeling a feeling, and it feels like, and we usually label it guilt, but it kind of sounds like I should be doing this, or I need to be doing that. And so paying attention to our language is really important. Wherever there's a should, there's a shame. So that's just kind of in a nutshell what mom guilt is. And if you're feeling it, then there's an invitation for you to take an action. You can start doing something or you can stop doing something. So the problem is, in the example that I gave, there's a lot of households that are 2-income households. And so whether you want or need to work, if you're feeling guilty about not being a stay-at-home mom, then but you want or need to work, you could stop the behavior, which leads to some consequences, like maybe not having a roof over your head or not having enough food for you and your family. Um, or if the want to working, it's maybe you're going to feel less fulfilled as a stay-at-home mom. So there are consequences to stopping that behavior. So in that situation, we need to change the belief. So if a good mom it stays at home with her kids, there has to be an exception, right? So except when she wants or needs to work, except when she's showing her children how to take care of their her responsibilities, how to follow your passions and dreams. So just because we can't change that behavior doesn't mean we can't change the belief.
Oh my gosh. So, first off, I love this. So, you said something very profound. You said that mom guilt is simply a notification. And the way you broke that down was amazing. So, mamas, if you have to rewind this and listen to that again, because mom guilt is really just a notification. It's just letting us know that there's something going on. And hey, we may need to attend to that. And then I love how you said that it also gives us a choice to make. And if you see me bending down, I'm like actually taking notes because this is really good. And when we make that choice, sometimes we have, well, not sometimes, but we do have the option to change our beliefs around that so that we don't feel horrible. So I love that. I love that. I love that. So let me ask you this question. Can you share a moment when you actually had experienced mom guilt, how that affected you, and how you actually navigated through it?
Yeah, the basis of my story is that I had a babysitter that was inappropriate with my son. And that's the other kind of guilt that we have, is there's something in the past that we can't do anything about. And so it was actually years later that I recognized that there was more to it than just the act itself, because when it happened, I jumped into action. I was like, okay, well, let me get justice for my son. And then the justice didn't happen because people lied about what happened and they didn't believe him because he was 4. And there was, so so it just went away, like nothing ever happened. And so now not only is it my fault that it happened, but it's my fault that I didn't get justice for him. And so I carried that around for a couple of years. And one day I went to a doctor appointment with him, and he was complaining about something that I thought might be connected to this situation. And so I brought it up in the doctor's office, and they wanted to open an investigation, and I got pissed. and I and I ended up walking out of the doctor's office. So because I'd been in coaching for probably a year at that point, I was like, ooh, this is a really interesting reaction. This isn't how I normally behave. I don't get angry about people asking me questions. I don't get up and walk out of a doctor's office without being officially excused, like, and so I texted my coach and I was like, I think I might feel guilty about something. So there was a think, like, it wasn't even a for sure. And I was on my way to this coaching program, and I volunteered to be the demo, which I almost didn't raise my hand. She said, who has guilt that they'd like to release? And everybody raised their hand except for me. And then they kind of went around the room, who's feeling guilty about what. And then when the person next to me went, I finally raised my hand and I said, I let someone hurt my son. And she had a physical reaction to my statement, and she walked me through this process. And when we were done, it was like 50 pounds of weight just lifted off of my shoulders. And then I always knew as a coach I wanted to work with moms. And I started interviewing moms when I went home, and I just started seeing guilt everywhere. And so I had zero confidence in my speaking voice at that time, in my coaching skills at that time. Like, I'd gone through this program, but I hadn't practiced, and I hadn't engaged with people. And I was like, well, what if I don't know what to say? And so I had been writing since I could put two sentences together. And even though I had taken this 12-year hiatus from writing, I wrote a book because I wanted people to have the information in my head, and I just didn't have that confidence. So I wrote a book called Good Mom Rules, Ditch Mom Guilt and Find Your Happy. And that was like kind of my first content that I put out there for people. And then as the years went by, I started actually using my voice and talking on podcasts and really figuring out, oh, I do know what to say and how to help people. So that's a little bit of my journey as a mom and as a coach.
So first off, you deserve an applause for that, because, oh my gosh, like, first off, thank you for being so open and transparent with us, because oftentimes we're going through stuff as well. And when we go through those things, we don't know what to do. And oftentimes I believe that as moms, we kind of close it in. And you shared something that I thought was very interesting. You said that you opened up about what happened, about your situation. And when you released it, that's when the help came. And actual help helps. Like, when we actually reach out to get help, it helps. So I believe that the whole idea behind holding it in is another thing that causes us to even feel more of that guilt, but actually releasing it and getting help. I love that. And now, ladies, mamas, ladies, you have someone who has lived through this. And so I'm excited for those of you all who will get a chance to work with her. This is so exciting. Okay, so here's another good one. How can moms differentiate between guilt that serves a purpose and guilt that holds them back?
That's a really great question. I think it's kind of the same. So because of guilt being a notification, right? So, and we don't know how guilt is affecting us really until we let it go. So the other part of my story is that once I let it go, I recognized that I was pushing my son away, because I had this mechanism of, I'm going to leave you before you have the chance to hurt me. And I had projected into the future that one day, because I didn't get justice for him, and because I let it happen to begin with, I was holding on to, I let it happen, like I chose it to happen. I totally lost my train of thought. I was projecting into the future that he was going to come back to me and say, how come you didn't protect me? And for this 6-year-old boy that I loved so much to turn around and come back and say that to me, I would have rather died in that moment than to ever hear him say that. And so I started distancing myself from him. And because of my, I'd had this awareness about the 5 love languages with my dad, that like my dad and I had different love languages. And so he wasn't showing me love in ways that I was able to receive it. And so I asked my son, what does mommy do that makes you feel the most loved? And he said, when I snuggle him. And I was doing that the least. Like, he would wake up in the morning, he'd come sit next to me, and he would snuggle me. And then I would be like, okay, suddenly I have to do the dishes. Like, and that was my brain protecting me from this future rejection. But to answer your question, when, there's guilt that happens, for instance, because we yell at our children. I mean, and I think we can all agree that yelling at our children is probably not something that we would define as a good mom does, right? We can all kind of agree that yelling is not the best thing, that there are better ways to communicate with our children. And the little buggers can piss us off to the point where we yell and then we feel guilty about it. And yelling is an option. It's optional. It's not mandatory. It's not a mandatory part of parenting. We can talk to our children in ways that they listen. There's a book called that.
Mhm.
And, you know, there are ways of working with our children that don't require the yelling. So if you have this belief that a good mom doesn't yell at her kids, but you are yelling, that's the invitation to change the behavior,
Oh, that's so
right?
good.
And it might not, it's not like, okay, I'm not going to yell anymore. That's where, you know, we're coaching and one-on-one support and, you know, reading books that give you ideas for you to implement. Like, these are all things that are helpful. Listening to things like the summit, these are things that are going to help you be a better parent. And it's not a switch that you can flip. So when I would yell at my son, because I was a yeller 100%, not 100% of the time, but I absolutely was doing it. I recognized, okay, I don't want to do this. And I didn't stop myself in this moment. What created that problem? What created the situation? He said this, that made me feel this way. Then I reacted this way. And then I would go back to him and I would say, when this happened, that I made that mean this, which made me feel this, which made me react this way. And I apologize for yelling at you. And in the future, when I ask you to vacuum the bathroom floor, I would like you to do it the first time that I ask you to do it, please. Real life example. There wasn't yelling in this example. This happened this weekend, but there was irritation. Like, he said to me, he's like, I want to do it perfect. And I said, I don't want you to worry about perfect. I want you to focus more on doing what I asked. Because I asked you to do it, but you're coming down here, you know, looking for the praise for something that you haven't done yet, or something. It was so interesting. And I said, there is no perfect. We can strive to do our best, but I want you to throw the idea of being perfect out of your head, which works as much as it works, which it doesn't, but
No, that is good. And thank you for using the example of yelling, because a lot of us can relate to that, because I was that mom, especially with my first one, where the yelling was the thing, because that's what I had been hearing, not necessarily at home, sometimes at home for serious things, but definitely outside of my home around certain family members. And even in this home now with my younger three, I notice sometimes before I yell, because I'm just like you, I decide I don't want to yell anymore. And I notice that when my kids do something, and you can add something to this if you want when I finish, but when my kids do things that I don't approve of, I try to get to the heart of it. Like, why are they not doing it? Or I would address, like, if they are behaving in a weird way or a bad way, a way I don't like, I won't say weird, but in a way I don't approve of, I often have to ask myself, okay, what's going on in their hearts? What's going on in their minds that are having them do this? Because I believe if you don't get to the heart of what's going on behind the behavior modification will never work. And that's the same for us as moms. I have to ask myself, why did I react like that? Why am I feeling like this? Because now I check my feelings first before I go into react mode. Check my feelings. What are your thoughts on that?
no, I think that's amazing. You know, I didn't have a friend of mine teaches to practice the pause. It is something that is so hard for me to do, to pause before I react. I've been a reactionary person for so long. But as I've like deconstructed a lot of my triggers, there isn't a reaction because there's no trigger there anymore.
Oh.
So I wasn't able to just say to practice the pause. I didn't have that awareness or ability for so many times. But I was able to, I did have the control of looking back at what created the reaction that I had. And again, this weekend, yesterday actually, my son and I were on the trampoline, and then while we were on the trampoline, I said, I really think that you need to do a sport this year. He's 13. He's never liked sports. But there's things that you can learn from sports that you don't learn anywhere else. And I didn't do sports, so I don't know what those are. But my husband fiance came in and, supported me because he was in all the sports. And I said, you can pick the sport, but, I want you to do a sport next year. And then that kind of turned into, this conversation about doing what I ask. And the first time that I ask, or before I ask, that every day you're supposed to do your chores. Why do I need to ask you to do them? You're 13 years old. You should be able to do them by now. And I brought that up because he said to me, we were right before we went to go shoe shopping. He says, I feel like you guys don't care about me anymore and you don't love me anymore. And he's said something like that in the past, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. And so when he and I were waiting for my fiance to get his haircut, I said, can we talk about this? Because I waited for him for the emotion to kind of pass, because inside the emotion, his rational brain is not active. He's in his fight, flight, or freeze brain. When we're emotional, we are inside that, the reactionary brain. And so I kind of let him, get into a space where he felt calm again. And I said, I'm curious, can you tell me what makes you feel that way? Like, what is it that we're doing or not doing that makes you feel that way? And so he gave an example which was unrelated to the talking that we were doing. I 100% thought because we're making him do more chores, or because we're making, asking him to do a sport or whatever. And he said, you guys, like, when I get hurt now, you don't like come to my rescue like you used to when I was little. And I was like, oh, okay. And it didn't make any sense to me. So I was glad that I asked the question. And then after we got through all the questions, I also said, because we got to a place where he wants me to play with him on the trampoline more, or play with him in general. And I said, did you know, consciously, like in your head, that that's what you wanted me to do in order for you to feel like we care about you? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, my invitation to you is, if you know what it is that you want, say that. Because if you go to your future wife and say, I don't feel like you love me, she might say, oh, well, let me show you how I love you by buying you gifts, or by cleaning the kitchen, or when your love language is not those things. Those are her love language. Like, you just might not have that. But if you're clear about what you want, just say what you want. You're way more likely to get what you want if you just say what you want than if you say, this is how I feel. You can say, I want this because I'm feeling this way too.
That
It's
is
a lot to ask a 13-year-old, but I was like, just kind of throwing it out there.
No, that is so good, because one thing I tell my kids, especially my 8-year-old, because when she starts feeling angry or disappointed or things like that, she goes right into reactionary mode all the time. But I'll often tell them, I say, no, baby, your emotions aren't bad. They are just a guide. They're guiding you for you to see what it is that you may need in the moment, or that you may need in general, or even in the future. So whenever you feel those things, feel them. But I love what you just said. You asked him you asked him if that is what he needed to feel a certain way. And wow, like I'm gonna have to borrow that.
Please, all my examples, if they work for you, you may have them, take ownership of them, evolve them. Like the 5 love languages, it talks about your romantic partner. And I took it to a parent level and to a child level. Like, this is how I was feeling with my dad, and this is how I was using it with my son. But he was 6 years old when I had this epiphany, and so I changed the behavior. But I use that as a reason, like, that guilt is so important to dig into and to release, because you don't know how it's affecting you until you let it go. So there's 3 things that I work on with moms specifically, and that's fear, overwhelm, and guilt. Those 3 things are 3 things that are going to alter your parenting in a way that you don't want. Yeah, I'll
That's
just
so
let
good.
that.
Well, I know, let that marinate because when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, because honestly, like when we are overwhelmed or overstimulated, we automatically go into reactionary mode. When we are fearful, we automatically get into that same mode. And when we feel guilty, and those things, we can never be creative. You cannot create in fear, overwhelm, and guilt. And if you can't create in those 3 things, how can you be good to yourself? How can you be good to your kids? You know? And if you're in a relationship, how can you be good to your significant other? It's impossible.
Yeah, and you just said those 3 things put you into reaction. And when you're in that reaction mode, you're not showing up as your best self. And it's when you're in the fight, flight, or freeze mindset, you have limited to no access to your intuition.
Oh, so
And
good.
parenting from our intuition is our superpower as moms.
Yes, it is. Look, because your intuition will give you things that you would have never thought would be there. So I have a personal story. I haven't shared this too often, but my oldest daughter, I was in college. I was 19, almost 20 when I had her. This is before my now husband and our 3 kids. And so she changed somewhere between elementary and middle school. My mom passed though while she was in high school. But there were changes, and when she was in high school, I would always come home, and I would just keep feeling like doom. I don't know why, but I would feel it, and I would feel like I would just go in her room and find her unalive. I just kept feeling that, and I wasn't sure why I was feeling that. And one day it was so strong, and I went in there and I said, "Baby, what's going on? How can I help you?" And she was like, "I don't want to tell you because I don't want you to cry." I said, "Baby, if I have to cry and that means I can help you, let me cry, please." And that's when she told me that she was feeling suicidal. And I believe that if I would have not listened to my intuition that day, that it would have been bad. That's just me.
Absolutely. And if you had been inside overwhelm, or if you had let the fear of that being true alter your state, right? Like, instead of like, well, or dismissing it, we dismiss our intuition all the time. My mom, she probably doesn't appreciate that I use this story, but she heard a voice in her head that said, "You better clean that up or you're going to trip and fall, and your life's going to be over." And she didn't clean it up, and she tripped and broke her ankle. And it's and I was like, "Oh, so you're the one that I learned that from." I used to call it hindsight intuition, because I would hear the voice, I would ignore the voice, and then I would think, "Oh, I did have that thought earlier." Like, and one of my good friends, she's like, "No, no, no, that's your intuition. You're just ignoring it."
Absolutely. It's good to have a friend like that.
Right? Exactly. I have so many friends who are mirrors for me, that like show me, like put the mirror in front of my face and like, oh, okay.
I love that. And that's what we need. And so to my moms out there who don't have friends that can be good mirrors for you, that's why we're having this summit. And that's why we have Miss Alysia on here with us today. And look, the value that you are giving us right now, this honestly, I believe someone would pay you $1,000 just for an hour, just to be able to sit right here and be able to read some of those things, like those tips you just shared. Oh my gosh, they were amazing.
I'll receive that.
So I really thank you for that. So I do want to ask you one more question before we get to the end of this. If a mom is just starting her journey of self-prioritization, what's one small step that she can take today without feeling selfish?
You know, it's so funny. The selfish part is something that stands out to me because you know, a lot I've seen out there, self-care isn't selfish, etc. And I think self-care is selfish. Who said selfish is wrong? And I know that it actually does. There's scriptures in the Bible, deny yourself and whatnot. But I think that it is important for you to take care of you, because when we're as women and as mothers, we do serve other people. It's what we do. But you can't pour from an empty cup, because when you do, what you're still doing stuff and you're still giving, but you're giving from emptiness. And when you give from emptiness, that's the fear, the overwhelm, and the guilt. Like it's that's the yelling. That's the not being able to to practice the pause, right? And when we fill our cup first and continue to fill our cup, if we're constantly putting into it self-care, things that we love, like energy in type things, the cup, like when you put water in a cup and you turn the faucet on and you hold the cup there, when it fills up, if you don't turn off the water, what happens to the water?
It overflows.
It overflows. Imagine if you were giving from the overflow. How different would your parenting be if you were giving from a place of fullness and not from a place of depletion? I have a what's it called? A webinar that I do that's self-care without guilt. And it's redefining what self-care is. Because a lot of people think self-care is like, let me get my hair done, let me get my nails done, let me get a massage. And all those things cost money. And if you don't have money to spend, you're not, if you have to choose, if a mom has to choose between her son getting new shoes and getting her hair done, she will choose her son every single time. So there's other things that we can do that don't cost money that are also self-care. And it's that what I was talking about, the energy in and energy out, is like, what are some things that bring you energy, that bring you positive vibrations? For me, I love to sing. I'll dance if nobody's listening. But I love to sing, whether they're listening or not. Okay, you watch people dance. I'll dance if nobody's watching.
I love that.
But I'll sing, I don't care who's listening. So that's something that fills my cup. And sometimes it's just those little switches in perspective. Like that's something that fills my cup. That's me time.
So good.
That's self-care. To sing along with the radio, whether my son wants me to or not, that's self-care.
I love that. It's funny because on the mornings when I take my younger two to school, we do things like that. We're just in the car just singing, and I'll grab my water bottle like it's a microphone and I'm singing in it, and the people are passing by looking at me like I'm so crazy. But they don't understand, like you said, for me, it's what fills my cup, singing, baking. And I would like to ask our moms, think about those things that you can do for free. Oh, I love it. You have a microphone.
I have two because I thought my son would actually sing with me, but he's not into it. But but it's finding these little things that, you know, people, what did you do before you were a mom that brought you joy? That's a good place to start.
So good.
If you don't know where to start, that's a good place to start. What did you do for fun before kids?
That is so good because we often forget who we were before we were moms. We're okay with the title mom, but when that's stripped away, preferably it won't be for people in a weird way, but when that's stripped away, it's almost like we lose our identity. But honestly, a lot of times we've just lost it in motherhood because we think that being the best mom is being everything we can for our kids without realizing, like you said before, if we're not taking care of ourselves, how in the world are we truly going to be able to show up the way we're supposed to for our kids? How?
And I'm currently in the process of building a community called the First Five. And it's for the first 5 years of motherhood. It's for the first 5 years of your child's in school. It's for the first 5 years of adolescence. And it's the first 5 years of empty nest, because in each of those stages, we need different support. But if in those first 5 years of parenthood, you can hold on to who you are as a mom, it's going to be so much easier, or who you are as a person, rather, is going to be
Yeah,
so much easier when you're in empty nest and your
that's so
kids
good.
leave.
So I would love more information about that. If you can get us some information and also about that webinar, because I believe that that would be very useful for our mamas that we have on here. So again, let me go ahead and just thank you for your time because this has been amazing for me. This has given me some tools that I'm going to start implementing today. And I would love to ask, how can our mamas out there stay in contact with you? And is there a little gift that you have for them?
Absolutely. So my website is AlysiaLyons.com, ALYSIALYONS.com. I am Coach Alysia Lyons on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm, and then my free gift for all the mamas out there is boundaries. I know we didn't talk a lot about boundaries, but a lot of our struggle as mom is not saying no when we want to say no, or saying yes when we mean no. And there's 3 scripts in there. So there's the benefits of setting boundaries, and 3 scripts you can use with your family, with your children, and also with yourself on to set boundaries without the guilt.
That's so good but based off what you were saying through this entire thing, you were talking about boundaries through this whole thing. You were putting out boundaries because I don't know if you would agree to this, but I believe that boundaries is a key part of the recipe to overcoming mom guilt. Key part.
Absolutely. And we feel guilty for setting boundaries. So it's kind of this like catch-22. I feel guilty when I'm working and I feel guilty when I don't. So that's why I created the setting boundaries without guilt, because there's comfort inside boundaries when you know where the edge is, and where, like, children are constantly testing our boundaries because they want to know what the limits are. And if you're saying yes when you mean no, I had a guest on my podcast that wrote a book called The Mom Who Never Said No, or Who Always Said Yes. I can't remember the title. One of those two. And it's not a preachy book, but it talks about it kind of talks about boundaries and why it's important to say no. Like, could you imagine if you never said no? It was a really cool book.
But you know what? When we don't say no, I don't know who said this, but like sometimes we'll tell someone yes, and when we're telling them yes, we're telling ourselves no. And that there is the crazy thing. Now, you all, this is like real life. I don't know if you can hear that over there. My daughter, she always has her. I'm so glad you can't did microphone then.
They filter out really good. I think that, you know, one way that I always get leverage with moms is they're watching the show, they're not listening to the lecture.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman and you have daughters, do you want your daughters to have boundaries? Do you want your daughters to be able to say no and stick to their no? Then you need to model that behavior for them.
Oh, it's so good.
And if you have sons, do you want your sons to honor their partner's no?
So
You
good.
have to model that. You have to set your boundaries. That, I mean, it's my coach said one time that the little girls grow up to want to marry their dads and be like their moms. Little boys want to marry their moms and be like their dads. And that statement terrified the ever-loving snot out of me. And because I was terrified of him becoming his dad, and I was terrified of him being in a relationship with someone who, like I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I became the woman that I wanted him to be, that I would be proud of him marrying. And I found a partner who I would be proud of him turning into. And because I didn't have the confidence to get a partner that was worthy of me, that was the filter that I was dating through.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that right there. Oh my gosh.
Right.
That is like a whole class on itself right there. Oh, that is amazing.
Get your tissues. It's okay. I'll wait.
Like, oh my gosh. That almost brought me to tears, but that is the truth.
It was powerful. I didn't realize even how profound it was when I made that decision, but I'm really glad that I did for my son and for me.
Oh my gosh. And for us, because now we're able to see that or hear that in action and now make a decision very similar so that we can actually live the life we want to live. And it's interesting because I think boundaries, when we have those and we actually take a moment to look at ourselves, they help us to see ourselves for who we really are. Because for a long time, we believe that who we are in that moment is who we are, when in actuality, I don't think that that's who we are, because we're always changing, always evolving. But when we do it on purpose, by setting those boundaries, by being open about what we want, that's when life changes for us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's when we evolve, into that beautiful butterfly, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Miss Alysia, is there anything else that you would like to add to the conversation?
Hours and upon hours, but
yes.
I feel complete.
Well, I thank you so much. This has been amazing. So, ladies, mamas, do not forget, her information is right down below here. Get in contact with her, add her on Instagram, Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. And did I miss anything? Are you on Pinterest or anything?
I mean, I'm on there, but I don't ever post because the character limit is too small. And I was like, I did actually want to say also that I work with moms one-on-one to help release the fear, overwhelm, and guilt and create more peace in their life. And I work one-on-one because there is no one size fits all. Like I love building my first 5 communities. But there's nothing like one-on-one support, and it's the quickest way to get the most results. The first mom that I had go through my program, in the first 6 weeks, there was a moment where she came on the call and all she did was gush the whole time about how amazing things are. And yeah, we've had other conversations besides this gushing of happiness, but it's like in the first 6 weeks where she was in tears in, the first couple of sessions, just like, this is, life's not working well, this system isn't working well, to gushing over how good she feels. There's nothing like that outside of one-on-one support.
I love that. I totally agree, because if you're ready, those moms out there who are ready to get out of the craziness of life, the chaos, the stress, the hard days, wanting to, some people may feel like they can't do it anymore. Having that, like you said before, having that one-on-one support changes everything. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
So I look forward to you ladies out there who will actually say, that's me, I need support. Because I look forward to seeing the transformation in your life. And I do believe that Miss Alysia can help you have that transformation, that's for sure. So Alysia, thank you so much again for being a part of this. And beautiful moms on the other side of the screen, I love you to life. And I will see you in the next episode.